This is The Baseline, discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. Welcome, everybody. You're tuned to The Baseline. Lee Warrenshaw discussing the hot button topics of the NBA. It's getting hot in here, but don't mind us if we're wearing a little bit of the cold gear. Baby, we need to bring the temperature down a little bit. I know, listen, up here in New Jersey, ain't nothing to play with, man. You know, we're dealing with some Arctic type conditions right about now. But apparently I didn't jinx the whole, South Florida area and stuff like that, because either my man is mimicking me, which, they say imitation is the best form of flattery or whatever, or you really feeling it down there. What's good, my brother, Mr. Shaw?
Man, iguanas are falling out of trees here in sunny South Florida. It is in the mid 30s, which is unlikely for us on a regular basis. So yeah, it's brick, as we say in the Northeast for the South Florida folks, man. It's not a game right now, but we're going to warm things up with our NBA content as always.
Yeah. Well, listen, I tell you what, we're going to have to warm things up, man, because things are getting a little frigid for certain teams, certain situations, certain deadlines probably need to be met. And we have a great show on tap, man. A little bit, we're going to have our special guest, Quab from the Dime. If people know who those guys are, man, they've been covering the NBA for quite some time and doing excellent work. The Dime featuring Josh Rodriguez and our man Quab, who's going to be joining us in a few moments. So you do not want to miss out, because we're going to be talking about a couple of the teams, man, that are just like, I don't know, they're feeling themselves. They're on one right now. But are we really buying into whether or not it's legitimate? Is it just smoke and mirrors that we're talking about right now? So we're going to get into that. And obviously we got some other news and notes happening in the association, some important things as we're getting a little bit closer to trade deadline. So as always, man, we appreciate you and yours for hopping on board with us this week. Be sure to get at my man Shaw at The Warren Shaw. You can get at me at Game Face Lead, the show's Twitter handle at NBA Baseline, available on all the major platforms. You know where to find us. If you want to catch this episode and all of our previous episodes, you can also go to www.thebaselinenba.com. And if you also rock with us and you're catching us on the YouTube channel, we'd like to say hello to you and yours. If you catch the blue and white logo down at the bottom of the screen, you know that we rocks with the 19 Media Group family. 19 Media Group family running these content streets. Go to www.19mediagroup.com to not only check us out, but also check out the family of great content creators that are a part of the 19 Media Group family, whether it's sports, entertainment, culture, you name it, we're on it. So definitely go check out the 19 Media Group peoples, man. They got a little bit of something of everything for your listening pleasures. Coming up, we got our special guest, Kwab from the Dime, going to come in here and drop some signs for us. But first, this episode of the Baseline NBA podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. The big game is almost here, and there's no better way to cash in during America's biggest sporting event than with PrizePicks, where it always feels good to be right. And since the big game is right around the corner, that also means it's your last chance to get in on the football action before next season. What better way to close out the season than with PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5 lineup. You can also find a community of PrizePicks with the new social feeds feature. You can share PrizePicks with your friends and copy lineups from winners with a single click. Copy lineups you like or use them as inspiration for your own picks. You can even follow PrizePicks partners like us and tailor fade our picks with just one click. This basketball season, I've been having a blast making these lineups. It's super simple and quick. Here's how it works. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you get them right, you can cash in. I've been checking out projections for SGA, Jalen Brown, and Cooper Flagg lately, and trust me, seeing your takes hit is the chef's kiss. So what are you waiting for? Download the PrizePicks apps today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Coming up, our guest, Kwab from the Dime, joining us. We're going to chop it up. Don't miss it here on The Baseline. And we are back, Lee Warrenshaw, Baseline NBA podcast. And on with us, man, and we're so uber excited to have him on. He's part of the dynamic duo that runs the Dime with Josh and Quab. Our man Quab is joining us here. Quab, thanks for hopping on board with us, man, to chop it up and talk shop, man. It's not like the NBA doesn't leave us with a little bit to talk about, right?
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I always say the NBA is the best drama on television, man. Like something
I know,
happens
like
every
all of
day.
this stuff with basketball wives and all. Why?
Every day there's something. Every day there's something, man. It's
You know
great.
what I'm saying? I mean, just leave it to the executives and leave it to the players. They're going to drop something. They're going to say something, you know.
Yeah.
So, hey, before we jump on real quick, Shaw, I know we got a lot to get into, but I got to get Kwab's take on this. I want to get your take as well too, Shaw. I don't know if people have been paying attention, right? Like, you know, we would probably put the Dallas Mavericks in this conversation we're going to have in a few moments. But I just wanted to get your thoughts about, you know, Jason Kidd, you know, with the clapback on the reporters during the press conference when asking about Cooper Flagg and him using him as a point guard. I'm not sure if you guys caught it, but I have never heard so many F-bombs being dropped by Jason Kidd, especially letting the reporters know. He's like, I know what the F I'm doing. he's like, you know, you guys sit up here and just do nothing but criticize. You ain't never played this game. Listen, I know what I had to get you that because it can't be that it's not on the social media outlets right now. But J Kidd dropping F-bombs and clapping back on the journalists is one that I just wanted to get your perspective on.
I mean, that's actually, that doesn't surprise me. Kidd has always been like fiery when he played in the league, even as a coach. So, I mean, we all have our criticisms when we saw him playing Cooper at point, but it serves a purpose. Like it's allowing him to grow and develop as a ball handler. So I feel like he's probably seen all the criticisms about it every time, and he's kind of just sick of it at this point. He probably didn't envision the Mavs being in this situation as they're in right now. They had championship aspirations to start the season, so for it to be kind of like another struggling year, he's probably more frustrated at that than this. So that might factor into it.
Yeah, and I'll just say I think it's interesting because Cooper's been in the news a lot this week. I think Jamal Mashburn also said he wouldn't be a top 6 draft pick if he was coming out this year based on the talent in this year's draft. So like the Mavs, they're all in the news for all the wrong reasons, I think, in a lot of ways, but also in a week where Cooper's putting together his best week as a rookie. You know, a 49-point performance, and now whatever it was he dropped in the last game on NBC. Like, leave Cooper and the Mavs alone. They got enough going on. J Kidd, bro, like, listen, like we're gearing up for next year. We all know that. But yeah, let's lay off them. They've had a lot. And it's also the anniversary of the Luka trade. Just so much happening in Dallas right now. And listen, I just want to leave those boys alone, man. They got a lot on their plate.
Yeah, man. Look, my whole thing is that I just love that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I love a coach standing on business and saying, hey, this is why I was hired. This is why I'm the head coach. And I think sometimes coaches kind of, you know, they fall privy to, you know, trying to say what the right things are, or maybe trying to deflect and detract. You know, listen, unless, and he doesn't, I'm sure he knows that reporter probably has not been in the locker room, been at the practices, and for a reason. There's obviously a method to his madness. And to me, I can appreciate that, right? I can, instead of toe tapping and dancing and making us continue to wonder about this, he's just basically let it stand. Now, listen, if Cooper fails, he's owning it, right? It's on him. And most coaches don't want to do that. They don't want to attach themselves to a high draft pick that has actually failed if he's not living up to those expectations. But by all accounts, he's living up to those expectations. And you remember, Shaw, we were talking about this earlier this year about the projections for Cooper Flagg as being a potential rookie of the year. The thing that gets obvious is we just look at the points. But now that he has magnified the fact that he is truly utilizing him as a point forward, those responsibilities actually, elevate him in that conversation if it becomes a close race between Harper and Edgecombe and those type of dudes and stuff. And I appreciate that because sometimes you got to speak it out loud for people to actually consider those type of factors if you're going to award a guy something that he may or may not necessarily have the statistics that overwhelmingly would have put him in that conversation.
Yeah, I think no matter what, as Quab said, Kidd is fiery. Not always the most scrupulous dude, but he's a fiery dude, and he's evolved as a head coach for sure. And so what he did with Giannis in Milwaukee, which obviously we'll talk about Giannis a little bit later on as well too, from his days of being in Brooklyn and working with that team, like Kidd has evolved and is a really good head coach at this stage. And let Kidd cook. Like he's got it under control, and Cooper Flagg has been the beneficiary of Kidd's coaching here so far in his early career. I think it's working out, man.
Absolutely. All right, Quab. So let's get right into the digs, man. We got to talk about some of the moves already been made before we get towards the NBA trade deadline. And then we obviously have a big conversation to have with us as it pertains to one of these superstars, which we'll get into in a moment. But if people have been paying attention already on the NBA wire, the Cavs, Kings, and Bulls have not wasted any time to wait around the trade deadline to make a play. So the big move now that has been talked about over this past weekend, DeAndre Hunter has been moved to the Sacramento Kings in exchange for Dennis Schroeder, Keon Ellis. The Kings will wind up getting DeAndre Hunter, and then the Bulls will also receive. The Kings will receive
DeAndre Hunter, and the Bulls get Dario Saric.
DeAndre Hunter to the Kings, Dennis Schroeder and Keon Ellis to the Kings, and Dario Saric is to the Bulls, along with two round picks. Sorry, too many moving parts for a 3-team deal like this. But Quab, I want to get your thoughts on this. It's interesting because the Inside NBA the other night kind of spoke to the date. Charles Barkley is a big DeAndre Hunter fan. I didn't realize this because he never gets his name right. But when he does that, he basically elevates the conversation to saying, why would the Cavs make a move like that, especially if the Cavs are still considered a team that will be a force to reckon with? They'll obviously be playoff worthy. Why shake things up in this kind of way by moving DeAndre Hunter?
I think it was a couple of factors, right? I think the emergence of Jalen Tyson kind of led to this. Jalen Tyson has been having a great year for the Cavs all season, and his contract is significantly lower than DeAndre Hunter's, which we always talk about this the new system in the NBA with the second apron and all that. So teams are always trying to find a way to get below the apron. But also DeAndre Hunter wasn't having the best shooting season. The Cavs have been struggling just in terms of injuries. They haven't been consistent. I think they're one of the teams that everybody kind of expected to be on top of the East to start the season. And now they're finally getting on track, winning games. But it's been a rough season for them. And another factor was that their backup guard position has been a struggle. Like, they picked up Lonzo Ball, and he hasn't been shooting well. Like, I feel like anytime I watch the Cavs, he goes over from the three-point line. His defense is still there, but his shooting and his offense has been subpar. And last year, the one thing they had was Ty Jerome, who we, on our podcast, we always used to talk about and joke around about. We had this thing called Ty Jerome propaganda, because he would come off the bench and like average about 20 points, whatever it was, and be a factor. So they kind of needed that spark off the bench, and maybe they looked at Dennis Schroeder as that factor. And to be able to do that, and you're losing a big piece in DeAndre Hunter, because I feel like he's really talented. But when you have a player like Jalen Tyson, who is younger, whose contract is much less, and he's been playing well for them, you kind of decide to go that way, in that direction.
The one thing I'll say to back a lot of that up, I think the Jalen Tyson emergence is massive, shooting 40% from the 3-point line this year. Again, kind of, we didn't know, like the Cavs didn't know what they had. Even a guy like Naquan Tomlin, like they've had to play these guys because Strus has been out and Hunter is underproduced, and Lonzo is shooting 30% from the floor, and I think 22% from three. So getting Schroeder in gives you more competence. You saw what Schroeder did for the Detroit Pistons last year, and kind of in a midseason trade, ironically. And the Cavs were like, listen, why not us? They started to trend in the right direction, even with Mobley in and out of the lineup here a little bit as well, too. And they realize the season is not lost for them. And it's going to be kind of the theme of our show. It's a very long season. So we think teams look one way, then things start to shift and change. I think that's what started to happen for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They're playing with whatever their new normal is, in terms of like, hey, maybe we get Max Strus back, maybe we don't. But either way, we have a bird in the hand right now with Jalen Tyson. Hunter, as Quab said, is costing us X amount of millions of dollars. And forget, Keon Ellis is the guy that's coveted around the league. The Kings did the smart thing for once. They started showcasing him the last couple of games because nobody could figure out why he wasn't playing anyway. So even if Tyson were to not continue his hot shooting, you still now get a plus defender in Keon Ellis as well, too. I think this is a very smart move for the Cleveland Cavaliers. It saves them a massive tax bill and gives them more depth and allows them maybe to move off Lonzo Ball if they were so inclined. Not that I think anybody would be looking for 29% point guard right now, but at the end of the day, it gives them some optionality. And Cal, it was funny because I was watching that same thing with TNT, and I was like, Barkley, like, what are you talking about? Like he was just so hell bent on he's a good dude. I was like, do you see what he's doing this year? Like, it's not working out. And then the math wasn't mathing for Cleveland. This gives them so much more optionality. And in Sacramento, hey, whatever. You take a chance on DeAndre Hunter. Maybe you're going to move DeRozan or something like that, and he can be the guy there. But I think this was a smart move for the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Bulls just facilitating things around, get a couple of second-round picks out of it too. Darius Saric finds a new home. Not much for me on that side of it, but I think a sign of some maybe small things to come in Chicago as well too. Cal, your thoughts, my G?
Yeah, I think this is the kind of move, like you said, it's a smart move, right? I think it only becomes smart if there's finality to this. In other words, to your point, if the Cleveland Cavaliers really like what they're going to potentially get from Keon Ellis, who I think is more of the key. I think with the Dennis Schroeder move only makes sense if you're lessening the opportunities that you're giving to Lonzo Ball, which also would mean that your intent is to move Lonzo Ball by the trade deadline. If you still have Lonzo Ball in as part of your roster by the time we get to the trade deadline, then I know this is not going to be something that we're going to have this conversation to, you know what I'm saying? But I think at some point, if we were going to talk about what happened to the Cleveland Cavaliers, we're going to look back on this and say, why was this an incomplete move? Like, why did this not come full circle to you doing what was necessary to completely round out this roster to be ready for the playoffs, right? For whatever it is that you're envisioning. So the only reason why I'm saying this is because everything that both you and Quab have alluded to, I think is going to make sense if the organization does the necessary things to make this roster look like what I think we saw Kenny Atkinson work with last year. Because that's not what this roster looks like. Part of it's because of that, the lack of play or the step back by certain potential players. But if your intentions is to make moves, whether it's for financial reasons or just roster reasons, it's got to make sense to me. So as far as I'm concerned, absolutely smart. Smart maybe for both teams, but it really only becomes smart as far as did it meet the needs for what both teams are saying that they were doing this trade for? And I have to see how Atkinson uses Ellis, and I have to see what Schröder is actually going to do under these circumstances, part of the Cleveland Cavaliers, which can only be predicated by what they're not doing with Lonzo Ball.
I'm going to say this one last thing. I'm going to kick it to you, Quab. We didn't talk about the fact that Darius Garland has also been injured the good majority of the season. So Schröder can step in as a starter if need be. Lonzo wasn't really giving them much when it came to that. So Donovan was having to run a lot of point guard, I think, in the lineups where Darius Garland was out. So Schröder, again, competent. Yes, he's been traded 8 times, and he's the butt of all of social media in terms of how many teams he's been on and how many teammates he's having, but he's competent. And I think if Garland is still going to be, hobbled for the foreseeable future, this is another reason why you do that, even if you don't move off of Lonzo Ball, because maybe you just need the depth that's there as well, too. They have Craig Porter Jr., who can also play some point guard as well, too. But I think that part of it, too. I think the Cavs are looking at, hey, can we get guys who are competent, can fit our system? The 3-ball is starting to fall a little bit better for them now, like it was last year. That's one of the main reasons, in addition to the injuries, why they haven't been as good. But this gives them a longer runway. Your thoughts maybe on that real quick, Quab, in terms of even Schröder spelling some Darius Garland as well.
Yeah, I feel like I agree with you because Dennis, even though like people make jokes about him, like he's a really good guard in terms of being able to play backup minutes or even spot up starting minutes, right? He makes an impact on the floor. He's able to stretch the floor for shooting. He's a more than a capable passer. And like you said, they've had to play Donovan Mitchell at point, and some like Kenny Atkinson has had to throw out like these weird lineups out there with Mitchell at point, with Jalen Tyson also handling some of the point, and Dennis allows you to get players back in like their natural positions with Garland out for the we don't know for how long, for the foreseeable future. And like you put out the stats of how bad Lonzo has been shooting, and they might be moving on from him just because he hasn't been what they expected throughout, and it feels like they need more. And when you look at this team, and we always talk about it, is like this team is still capable of winning the East. When you look at how the East is structured and how some of these teams still don't feel, for better words, just feel complete when it comes to Eastern Conference, right? And you look at the Cleveland Cavs roster, that still has a lot of talent. So if you're able to add to that talent and bring capable guards, and to your point, Cal, Keon Ellis is also very talented. I don't know if they're keeping him or moving on from him, but as a as a defensive prospect, he also brings something to the team that they need. So all these moves are important. I think it's a great move for the Cavs. I think it's okay for the Sacramento Kings. I don't know what the Bulls are ever doing. Like, I never know what the Bulls are doing. Like, so I guess you're just like, hey, we'll take some picks and make it work out. So yeah, but to me, it feels like the Cavs are trying to make moves, trying to figure it out. But with me, when it comes to the Cavs, it's like, are they healthy? That's going to be the main factor for them.
Always.
Actually, for a lot of teams, right? In the league this season. But if they're healthy, are they healthy? And if they're able to be healthy, we can actually see what you're capable of being.
Yeah, listen, all together, I think we collectively agree. No one is snuffing the move.
Yeah.
You guys are far more optimistic than I am about whether or not it's going to pan out for both teams, because I'm waiting for the other shoe to this part of it. Like, I feel like there's something else that needs to drop with this to make it work. You know, sometimes you go into the, you know what I'm saying? You go into the, and you start whipping up something in the kitchen, and it looks really nice when you see it on your laptop or your whatever tablet device, whatever. And then you taste it and you're just like, it's still lacking something. That's where I'm at with it. I don't know if I want to add a little more salt to this sucker, or if I'm like, okay, maybe it's just me and it tastes right. It feels right.
I'm a rock with you on the analogy. So, but you were going to stay with the bland Cavs as it was. You don't think they've added
no. It's not that I'm saying I'm staying with the bland Cavs. I understand. Like, if you're looking up and down the roster, who to me is more expendable and has value? It would be DeAndre Hunter. Yes, he's had a down season, but there was a reason why it would make sense even when the Atlanta Hawks decided to move on from him, because you had three other guys that arguably was doing the same thing as him, and it just looked like he needed to be better elsewhere, which he was. He was actually good for the Cavs last year. The thing that I'm thinking that maybe that doesn't get discussed, and I don't want to belabor that because we obviously got a lot of stuff to talk about. The one thing that I'm thinking, though, is I don't think DeAndre Hunter is fully ingratiated or has found himself with what this offense is supposed to look like under Kenny Atkinson. And I think Kenny Atkinson is struggling with how he wants to utilize him. If this is a more shooting-oriented offense, right, guess what? DeAndre, and we had this conversation about Mikal Bridges and the New York Knicks, which is why I said this was not a good move for the Knicks. He is a volume shooter guy. He needs shots, and he needs them in the bunches. And you can't do that when you've got 3 or 4 other guys that are going to prioritize getting their shots up. So if DeAndre Hunter is not maximizing efficiency, and when he's out there on the floor, he becomes a detriment to the team, not an asset. And I'm just thinking, if Atkinson is recognizing this and realizing it, move him now, to your point, for the money purposes and also the talent purposes, to maybe a situation where he can actually do that, and it's not going to cost or hurt anybody a thing on that team, and bring on those more effective guys that they don't have to shoot the ball a lot, but they do a lot of the other things better that DeAndre Hunter just can't seem to find himself doing when he can't become that effective on the floor like the Cavs had hoped he would. He was lightning in a bottle last year, but this year, I think you're really seeing where he needs time to get to that point. And Atkinson doesn't think, or nor the Cavs think, they got enough time to do that with the window that they have to try to win.
I'm a rock with it. And as you alluded to, we do have a lot to get to. So I'm actually going to lead us into the next trade that happened minutes before we came on. So God knows what else has happened while we were here recording. But in a move that I think makes a lot of sense for the Portland Trailblazers, the Atlanta Hawks get Vit Krejci to come to their team for Duop Reef and 2 second-round picks going to Atlanta. Atlanta's second trade of the season after obviously moving on from Trae Young, a couple of weeks ago. The Blazers are in the bottom third in three-point shooting. Krejci is a guy who can stroke it from the outside. And whether this signifies more moves for Portland as they try to make a playoff run here, as they get some other guys potentially come back. They're still waiting for Scoop. God knows if he's going to play at all this year. I haven't seen any updates at all. But not that he's going to help them from the three-point line. But I think this makes a lot of sense because it allows Avdia an opportunity to have maybe some drive and kick opportunities as well, and somebody who can just knock things down. They just do not shoot it well from there. So Krejci shooting at 42%. Even in the Shams tweet, it's highlighting that very specific point to give you the understanding of why Portland would make this move. So a lot of air quote NBA casuals are like, well, who cares? And who are these guys? But this is a very calculated move by the Blazers. And I think Atlanta, figures out a way to get some more draft equity because they also might be involved in larger trades. So these picks can ultimately be flipped around flipped around again for Atlanta as they try to make a potential run to get out of the Eastern Conference, out of the depths of the Eastern Conference, I should say, as they're in the play-in range right now. Quab, I'll kind of kick it to you. I mean, not a big name in terms of trade and name value, but do you understand why Portland did this trade, and then maybe a little bit from the Atlanta standpoint as well?
I actually liked the trade for the Hawks.
Mm.
So when I first saw it, because I know that the Hawks are without Onyeka for like, I think he took like it was
Oh,
a
that's right. Yeah,
crazy injury where like his mouth was like knocked out, and also Kristaps has been in and out of the lineup, dealing with what he's been dealing with since last year on the Celtics. So they're without a lot of size, right? And Duop Reef, for what he is, he's a stretch big that can open up the floor for some of for some of
good
their
point.
players that they have. And with Krejci getting traded, I think that opened. It felt like he wasn't needed as much on the Hawks since they made the Trae Young trade, because they added CJ McCollum in terms for shooting.
And
Kispert, and they still have Luke Kennard, who's having like a crazy shooting year in terms of his numbers. It's been like, I think he's shooting like 56. So I remember, I'm trying to
Lights
remember
out.
stats. Lights out, like ridiculous. So I think that they needed size. So when I saw it, I was like, okay, they're trying to shore up their size. To your point about Krejci and the Blazers, yeah, he brings shooting, so the Blazers need it. Also, I forgot about Scoot. When you said it, I was like, oh, Scoot is on the Blazers. He hasn't played all year, but the Blazers are another like interesting team in the West, where when you look at their roster, they have a lot of defensive pieces. Denny's having a great year, borderline all-star. And the way he's playing, the way he's able to attack the rim, you need spacing. The NBA is all about spacing, right, and shooting. So you add more than a capable shooter. And again, to your point, again, Shams highlighting the fact that he's a shooter makes it like, hey, they really wanted a shooter, right? So
Yeah.
that should help him out. But when I initially saw the trade, I was like, okay, that's good for the Hawks. But yeah, I didn't consider that for the Blazers.
Your best ability is availability.
Yeah.
That's it in a nutshell to me. The Portland Trail Blazers are going to have an available asset that can shoot the basketball, and I think is going to help them immediately with how Thiago Splitter, wants to continue to try and stretch the floor, and whether or not this comes down to what's going to happen to Scoot Henderson. I think, listen, this really comes down to, is Scoot Henderson going to be a point guard in this league? That's it, flat out. Other than that, I think he becomes expendable. I think, you can completely move off of him altogether. And I hate to say that because I'm not dismissing what he could potentially be or what he may have looked like. I'm just saying we are so far removed from what he was highlighted as being when he was highly regarded and coming up out of the, what is it, the OTE? Was it the Overtime Elite? When he got drafted, he was part of Overtime Elite. Like, so there's so many things that have transpired over the last few years, especially when it comes to the Portland Trailblazers, that this is no longer about whether or not Scoot Henderson is going to come in and, move the franchise into a different direction. You can take that burden off. Now it's just a question of, can he contribute anything to what the Portland Trailblazers have already established in the last couple of years, which is pretty rapid, right? Like they have a really, sound type of basketball team, and the direction is they can get better. You just need to make sure that the roster that you're putting together shows that. It can't be still predicated on guys that are just not available. So I think in the end, Vit is going to help out the Blazers a lot more than I think the opposite side of the trade, say per se, the Atlanta Hawks. I think you lean in more on building out and making more depth. We'll see how that all plays out. But I think for the Portland Trailblazers, this is a sneaky good move that is helping to improve certain aspects to what they're lacking immediately.
Yeah. I'm just going to follow up with Quab's earlier point too, and yours as well too, Cal. This does make sense for both teams, honestly. Forgetting about Okongwu's, dental fracture that he suffered in the Boston Celtics game. Not sure how long he's going to be out. And Porzingis, his lack of availability yet again. This could, like I said, Ruth is a serviceable big. Again, who can stretch the floor, as Quab alluded to. And then I'm going to reemphasize the fact that they're getting additional picks in this if they were to make another move and want to flip Porzingis for whatever name that might be available out there as they try to get to shore up this thing. So 2 moves in here in the early season, the last coming days of the trade deadline, that seem to make sense for the teams involved at least on one lens. Like we're not really sure what the Kings and Bulls are, exactly what they're doing, other than helping facilitate some things, and maybe evaluating some talent here later on. But I really do like this for Atlanta, Portland, and the Cavaliers.
You know what that means, right, Shaw? All the sensible trades are happening now for the nonsensical trades to happen later. That's what's going down.
A precursor of madness to come. I assure you, you are correct.
You're tuned to The Baseline. Cal, Warren Shaw, and our special guest Quab from the Dime joining us here as we continue to keep things moving along. Let's get right into the big elephant in the room, or the big Greek. What is it? My big fat Greek wedding or whatever, or maybe the big fat Greek divorce. Maybe that's what this needs to be, right?
Like that one.
We've been trailing this now for over a month, right? My man Shaw has been on it. He's been saying, the niceties and the real diplomatic way of Giannis's handling of, where he wants to be and how things needs to be handled is quote unquote soft, right? We've been watching this mess, and then obviously the injury that has taken place to Giannis, which has basically put him on the mend to at least March. And even our last episode where we had our brother Jabari Davis speak on it, even he said he saw the sign and said, listen, man, you guys, come on now. Should be an amicable divorce. Make it happen. Let's not delay the inevitable. Let's not make this more than what it needs to be. But obviously, it's speaking to a much larger looming thing that maybe needs to be discussed. And I'm going to ask you, Shaw, to kind of hone in on this, and then we'll hand it off to our man Quab. You know what I'm saying? He's the cleanup hitter. He's going to do the cleanup on this. But I think it speaks to how the NBA is operating in this space. It feels like teams are not pulling the trigger yet on anything that they need to do and have to do unless we know what is going on with Giannis. So when the Giannis domino falls, then it all falls. And my question is, should it really be like that? Should it really be handled in that kind of manner? If you're an organization with this kind of window that you have, where it's literally anyone's game, right? Except for the Milwaukee Bucks. It's literally anyone's game. So are you really shooting for big fish? Or should you be doing like what some of these teams we just discussed, making the smart deals in the meantime to make sure that you're positioning yourself to be better, regardless of whether or not you win the Giannis sweepstakes?
Yeah, I'm the type of dude who's like, I'm going to go in with my soldiers and do what I think is best for me. But there are general managers out there who are more reactive, right? And then it's like, remember back in the day, we use a lot of Celtics references here, Quab, so forgive us. But remember back in the day when Danny Ainge shipped off, Kendrick Perkins and to get Jeff Green because, snap, the Heat got LeBron and Wade, so we need more wing defenders. And it ended up effing with the chemistry of that Celtics team and their ability, in essence, to ultimately compete. Sometimes you over tinker and you don't do the right thing. I think there are going to be some teams here who think they are legitimately in the Giannis air quote sweepstakes, and there's going to be some teams who feel like, hey, we need to respond to another team if they do get Giannis, and then what can we do and try to build from that. So in some ways, Giannis is going to, I don't want to say hold up, but he's going to somewhat guide how the trade market is going to go when we get to next Thursday's deadline ultimately. So as we're discussing it, Giannis is, I don't say he's put out a list, but they've been very diplomatic about, what this is. The Knicks, the Wolves, the Warriors, and the Heat seem to have a pseudo inside track. It may take third teams to get involved, especially with Golden State, because they are, I think, hard capped second apron, whatever the case may be. Do they have enough assets and or young players that would entice the Milwaukee Bucks? The Knicks sipped around them at the beginning of the summer, I guess, or in the latter part of the summer. Ultimately, didn't happen there. I think Anthony Edwards and Giannis could be a really unique and dominating pairing if it could potentially work, if Minnesota could also figure out a way to get their books ordered to get together. And then there's the Miami Heat, who are always involved when it comes to some of these big name guys. So I answered your question in a very, very long and maybe not so diplomatic way in terms of, I think he's going to hold up the trade market for sure. But I think, and to sum it up, I think some other teams are going to say, listen, we still got to do what we need to do, regardless of where Giannis is. Quab, your thoughts on not necessarily the ongoing Giannis saga, but of any of these teams, do they make sense now at the deadline? Or do you see this playing out like many people do going out into the summer? Because that's where more teams have more equity, you don't know what happens in the playoffs, who they also maybe wanted to kind of come off of. I don't think Giannis plays again this year, regardless, in Milwaukee. But do you think he gets traded by Thursday, or is this something that's going to play out into the summer?
I mean, it makes more sense that it would make more financial sense and more just sense overall for some of these teams if he's traded by the summer. But to your point, though, he is the big domino. I feel like every season there is that big domino. Everybody's waiting to get traded for before teams feel like they can make a trade or make a reaction. But it's been him being traded I feel like has been reported all summer. If I'm not wrong, right? I feel like Shams has been talking about this since before the season started, and it's been this weird like limbo thing where Giannis doesn't want to come out and say he wants to leave, but everybody knows he wants to leave, right? We all know he wants to leave. I feel like it would make more sense for Milwaukee to get this done before the trade deadline, just for the state of their team, because it feels like they're in limbo, and the worst place you want to be as a team is being limbo, right? And then some of these teams that are interested, a Giannis trade it's not a simple like one of one trade. It gets complicated because he is a superstar at the end of the day, and to get one, you need to give up a lot. Some of these teams that are on this list, like I feel like he could fit anywhere with his skill level, his talent, the way he plays. But for example, like the Knicks, right? They gave up too much in the Mikal Bridges trade. Simply put, they did. I'm a Nets fan. That's my team growing up, being in Jersey since they moved to Brooklyn. I'm a Nets fan. When that trade was announced, I was like, wait, what? You gave up all that for him? And now, because of that, you don't really have that many assets you could throw at a team who would want the draft picks and a young player and so on and so forth, right? Golden State is another team where, like you said, with your cap situation, it would have to be a 3-team trade and all that. So it gets very, very complicated. But I think it would serve better for Milwaukee to get this trade done before the trade deadline, just because of the reports that are coming out. It feels like nobody's happy. The team is kind of just like whatever, because they know it's the inevitable. And when you know that you're losing your superstar, every day you come to work, it's like, okay, here we go again. We got to deal with this. We got to answer more questions about this. We can't just focus on playing ball. That becomes a factor, right? So I feel like they should try to get it done, but it's not going to be a simple trade. Like, I'll be shocked if it's like a simple trade. I'm still shocked about the Trae Young trade, how kind of just minor it felt. It was like, okay, here you go. Here's a couple and you get it done. So that's my thoughts on it. I'm still waiting for the trade to happen so I could get a real reaction about what it is. But this feels like something that should have happened a long time ago. And Shams has been like on deck being like, hey, it's going to happen. This is going to happen. And he's been saying that since the summer. So that's been my thoughts on it. But I don't know, man. I'm more like, I'm more of a wait and see guy at this point when it comes to this trade, because it feels like it's just we're all just waiting for it to happen so that other teams can make some moves.
I'll say this, Giannis is a first ballot Hall of Famer. He will have a statue if he wants one in Milwaukee. And this has just been weird, I think, from both sides in terms of their wanting to part from each other. The writing's been on the wall, as we all know it. And I think it's fine. I think it's now at a point of where Milwaukee is kind of in a weird situation because they want to do right by Giannis, but they got to think about their organization. They do. In the same way that they acquired Dame and Portland thought about their organization. But who's to say you can't go home again? We've seen this, multiple times now, from Dwayne Wade divorcing from the Heat, going on 2 other teams before eventually kind of coming back. I think we're probably going to see the same thing with Klay Thompson eventually, whatever the case may be. I think this is going to be a divorce for now, and maybe Giannis ultimately finishes his career. But for right now, this needs to happen. And whether or not it happens by Thursday, I think it's a matter of, do the Bucks want to deal with the drama, so to speak, or do they want to think about it from a business standpoint where everything I listen to and everything I read is like the NBA year calendar changes at the draft. So no more draft picks become more available in future years because you can't trade X amount of picks, especially you can't trade X amount of first round picks in back-to-back years. But you open the calendar year up, and then by the lottery, now we're not talking about hypothetical draft positions. Where everybody is also drafting as well too. So I think that's what gives Milwaukee not necessarily incentive, but a longer runway to kind of play this out. Yes, to listen to all the offers that are out there. But I think it might make sense for them to wait because they can potentially get a better offer. Nobody wants to relive the Luka Dallas days, and you know what I mean. And I think Milwaukee's already ahead of the game in that regard. But now they know they can extrapolate. Truly, what they can get is the longest reach and cast the widest net to get the best potential offer out there, not having to just take whatever's available here in the next 5 to 6 days. Kyle, some quick thoughts on the Giannis situation. You're on mute, by the way.
Sorry, I just have a quick question for you. Is there a no trade clause?
No.
For Giannis? No. Okay. So I alluded to this when we had this conversation, a little bit with Jabari, right? And I said, if you're the Milwaukee Bucks, I think this is not a good time for you to worry about trying to move Giannis, regardless of whether or not the climate is there. And you have like those teams that you mentioned that you showed a moment ago as saying they're the best or potential, they're the ones who have already reached out or have the best potential suitors for Giannis. Because I think the only way that this works for the Milwaukee Bucks, and I'm speaking just from the Milwaukee Bucks perspective, to your point, you do not want to have to litigate the stench of what just happened with the Dallas Mavericks and Luka Doncic. And whatever deal you do is never going to satisfy the appetite of savagery that Milwaukee Bucks fans are going to have, knowing that you had to pull the trigger in moving Giannis. I don't care what anybody wants to say. You can try and rationalize this all you want to, but passionate fans don't like seeing their corner star players, their franchise players being moved. You will never convince them differently. It'll take 10, 15 years before they have to win 2-3 championships to justify moving a player like Giannis, regardless of whether Giannis wants to stay, go, it doesn't matter. It's just the optics of it. When a bad trade already happens the year before, it sets precedent that if you don't do right by it, you are going to live to regret it for years forward.
I have a question. I think referencing the Luka, because I brought it up, I think referencing the Luka situation is important, but this feels more like Dame divorcing Portland than Luka divorcing Dallas, because Luka didn't even know there was a divorce happening. Right. And I think in Portland, Dame was like, listen, hey, now it's time, and whatever the case may be. So they kind of came together. And Dame didn't even bring a championship to Portland. That's not a knock. But that's just a fact. Giannis did bring a championship to Milwaukee. And I think his personality is such where he doesn't want to be the villain. And Milwaukee doesn't want to be the villain either. But it skews more towards the Dame divorce than it does, whatever happened with Luka and the Dallas Mavericks last year. So I'd say that to say is that I think the fan base is going to be more palatable as long as the return is somewhat acceptable. Like if it's like BS, then yeah, there might be this outrage. But I think even Milwaukee rational Bucks fans are like, well, we see the writing on the wall. Like this has been happening for the better part of 2 years now.
So without being specific, Sean, what would be more acceptable? What would be more acceptable? Because even the move that happened, even what happened with Damian Lillard, the reason why Damian Lillard's backlash was more on him was because of how he was handling the situation. This isn't I'm not talking about how they're handling it. What I'm saying is where we are right now. We are basically 2 weeks away from the trade deadline. Any move, 5 days. I'm sorry, 5 days away from the trade line. Any move that is being made is not necessarily calculated. You get what I'm saying? Because even when Shams was reporting this, we didn't even know which teams are actually in the running for this. Now we're only seeing 4 teams, and legitimately there are 4 teams that are actually playoff-worthy teams. What I'm saying is even if they give up a haul for this, it's still not going to feel right because of how everything is landed, and we're just now getting to this stage of it. At this point, you might as well just let it play out to the rest of the year, right? Regardless of you bring back Giannis or you don't. But it allows to what you were saying before about the runway to allow Milwaukee to do it right for them, for their organization, not just to the player, but for their organization. And they can manage the PR and how this is being done. Anything that's being done now is only serving the purpose to say, we're just being pressured by the way that everything is being handled with Giannis. And that's just not a good look for a team like the Milwaukee Bucks.
I agree. And so, yeah, Kwab, let's say that I'm going to tap you in like last point. I think for the 4 teams, and that's who are reported, right? We don't know all the machinations. Like I can go in the trade machine and figure out 100 ways to make the math work, right? But, does that end up happening? I think to Kwab's earlier point, why it could happen is because the acquiring teams feel like they have a chance this year. And they'd want to do that right now, as opposed to wait till next year. And then a guy who's had multiple calf strains in the same year now turns 32 years old and whatever else. Like, is he more susceptible? But hey, if you can get him back this year, why not take a shot where OKC was looking like world beaters, but now they look more human. And, maybe this isn't the dynasty that everybody thought it was going to be. So I just wanted to say that I think there might be some urgency for some teams to get it done, as Quab was alluding to. So Quab, go ahead and tap back in right there, my brother.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think these teams have a lot of urgency. Like, for example, like the Knicks, they probably feel like they have a chance now, especially after going to the Eastern Conference Finals and then firing your coach. You're kind of under the spotlight. Like, you need to make this happen. You like at least try to make it to the finals. But I wanted to ask both of you guys this: in your opinion, when did it go wrong for the Bucks for this to be the case, right? Because it's always felt like Giannis has been, I'm loyal, I'm here, like I'm never leaving. He always made it seem like he's going to be like the player that's gonna be in the one jersey for his whole career. And now with all this happening, it's like you said, like it feels like he doesn't want to be the bad guy, and the Bucks don't want to be the bad guy, but obviously now something has to happen. It just feels like something is going to happen. But like in your opinion, like when do you feel like it kind of went in this direction? It kind of went wrong for them.
You want to chime in on that first, Shaw?
I mean, I think it's circumstance more than operation, to be honest with you. Okay. From my lens, Giannis himself has not been healthy for 3 out of the last 4 playoff runs, I think it is, right? And that year they got beat by the Heat, ironically. After, I think that was right after it was just like, what's happened here? But Milwaukee's bent over backwards. Like they've done the things. Like they brought in Dame. I didn't agree with the stretch and wave of Dame to bring in Miles Turner this year, but they brought in Drew Holiday previous that. They did everything they possibly could that was available to them at the time. I think the injuries played a major part into this. And then Dame also being, somewhat hobbled during his duration in Milwaukee, with Giannis also being hobbled, they never actually formed their chemistry. So I don't think this is a divorce of, hey, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. I think it's, hey, we tried, and sometimes our best just isn't good enough. And maybe that's thinking about it overly diplomatically, but that's my lens of it, real honestly and truly. Like there was a lot of injuries that came into this, and the pairings, while on paper should have worked, just ultimately did not. Cal, your thoughts?
Yeah, so real quick, I think there are 2 iterations where this came to a head. I think the first iteration was how the Milwaukee Bucks handled Drew Holiday. Even I can tell you this. I just thought that the way it was handled, I think it left a bad taste, not only in the mouth of probably Giannis, but also left a bad taste in the mouth of the team itself. Sometimes I understand you have a window and you're trying to win, and they probably thought like they weren't going to be able to do it with Drew, so it was necessary to go ahead and move him. But I just thought the way that it was done and how it was done, I think it did something. It set a tone, or it set something that we had to start paying attention to with how Giannis wants to operate and how the organization wants to operate with Giannis. And then I think after that, with the situation with Damian Lillard, I thought certainly did not help the situation. But I think just more importantly, the situation that happened with Adrian Griffin and then with Doc Rivers coming in as the head coach, it just felt like, to your point, Shaw, like I am not besmirching or trying to downplay that the Bucks didn't do their best. I think how they operated and did these particular things, they stand out loud and clear with whether or not Giannis did have an influence, did have say, if whether or not they were thinking all around the team. We'll never know all of that until these guys have left their whatever's internally keeping it together and keeping it hush hush. Like somebody's got to release the big freak files. That's what has to happen. Someone's got to release the files and let us know what really went down with Giannis and with the organization and why and how they made those particular moves that they did. Because to your point, Shaw, we can speak about it and say this is from a financial perspective. It was from a roster perspective. It's from a head coach's perspective. But I don't think none of that is going to really be spoken to truth until both parties are no longer aligned to each other as they are currently right now.
Quab, your final thoughts on it, because it's very interesting. You can look at this a lot of different ways. I think Giannis diva gets a very, very negative connotation. I think he has superstar privileges that he has denied publicly and has probably exercised privately that, and, none of us are quite privy to. So I think in Milwaukee, we're looking at it like, hey, bro, we did what you asked us to do. And then sometimes you weren't available. But, your thoughts, Quab.
I agree with that 1000%. I feel like it's kind of understated because he is the man in Milwaukee, and regardless of what I feel like is said in public, any move that's being made, they have to run it by him. It has to be the case. So to me, to your point, Cal, I didn't like losing Drew because Drew was one of the best.
Oh, I loved losing. I loved losing Drew.
I mean, y'all
for the
love
purpose of this conversation, you're absolutely right. Hate it 1000%.
Like for them, they did like so. It didn't that was a big factor in it. And then also making the move. The next move was they traded away Chris Middleton for Kyle Kuzma, who sometimes I forget it's on the team. Like and that's not me trying to like rag on a player, but the man went over in the playoffs. Like put up all these things that have happened. It's kind of like, well, you'd have to consult Giannis at the end of the day, like regardless, like if you're making a big move, especially roster moves, because these players he has to be comfortable playing with these players, and I feel like that part has been understated. And the other thing that always came out was like, well, he wanted to get traded to New York of all places. So I was like, okay, that's interesting. That's the one that's always been reported, but he is a superstar, and with superstar comes certain things where like, well, we're going to look at you when things go wrong. We're going to look at you when things are mentioned behind the scenes. It comes to the territory, right? And everybody's gonna feel like you have more control than you put out there. And Giannis has always put out the humble star, I don't do that type vibe, and that's what he does. But I feel like the organization definitely consults him when it comes to these things, man. And if it's at heads right now, the move has to be made. In my opinion, it has to be made. It is going to be crazy if this goes on into the offseason, because it's going to be a talking point for the rest of the season, and that's such a big distraction for a whole team because that's all they're going to hear for the rest of the season.
I just wanted to make sure I put this point out, and Shaw will get ready to plug into the next part of our segment. I'm not intimating that Giannis was never involved or that he is being blindsided. Again, I am just speaking to the fact that if you're an organization and you are having those conversations, like when you're doing a presentation and stuff to a company that doesn't know what your product is, who you are, whatever, they're going by what you're showing them, right? And so if the Milwaukee Bucks are showing them this and he's riding along with it, or he has a say in it, or whatever the case may be, we don't know if whether or not that was or wasn't the best move. What I'm saying, how it's been handled. Because again, at the end of the day, because he is the face of that franchise, he's going to still have to answer to it because everybody knows. And you don't want to be that person having to answer what the organization is supposed to be handling. You get what I'm saying? Like that to me is the big thing that I often kind of allude to sometimes when we're saying how those things are basically handled, because it's like you do it and just say, hey, I did what I was supposed to do, but that's not only it. There's also what comes after it, that there has to be accountability for that. And we can speak to that part of it too when the trade actually does happen eventually, right? Wherever Giannis goes, he goes, plays with another team. It's no longer, because there was a time when Giannis previously before was like, I want people to come, like, you come play with me. I don't want to go play for you. I want to play against the best. I want to be the man. I don't want to be aligned with jumping ship, kind of, doing a little quib at LeBron James, jumping ship to other teams, go play with other great players to go win a championship. I want to do it on my own. Maybe now that sentiment might change because of the landscape of the NBA. What I'm saying is, as a franchise, you also own that as well too, because you're a part of that. And Giannis is a part of that. So maybe that's going to also dictate what does happen in the next coming days, or maybe in the next coming months, if we eventually have this conversation about Giannis being eventually traded on. You're tuned to The Baseline. Callie Warren Shaw, our special guest, Quab from the Dime, joining us. Coming up, we got a little bit of a conversation to be had about teams, man, that look like they may be front-facing. What do we mean by that? Oh, you do not want to miss out here on The Baseline.
You've earned this. Now it's time to embark on your own personal adventure. Book your vacation with exquisite travel and tours today. Explore the world and discover yourself.
We are back. Callie Warren Shaw, our special guest, Quab from the Dime, host of the Dime NBA hosted by Josh Rodriguez and our man Quab, who's joining us here to help talk shop. We got a really interesting conversation that we wanted to have, and it's about two particular teams specifically who have completely flipped the script from their early season struggles, now are somewhat in the play-in playoff picture. And it's ironic because if these are teams that we should be watching and paying attention to, are we buying into the idea that they are a team not to be reckoned with, or are they basically fugazi? I mean, that's what it really comes down to. So we're talking about the LA Clippers and the Philadelphia 76ers. And I'm going to pass it on to my man Shaw to kind of like lead us into this aspect of the conversation, Shaw, because when we talk about a team like the Los Angeles Clippers, which we've done numerous times already this part of the season, a lot of it has been more about the disappointment of what the team has basically put out there on the basketball court and the way that they have lost basketball games. So I guess the question then becomes, with now the Clippers, being on a hot streak, really kind of rounding out to form, can we or do we trust that the Clippers are who they think they are or who they say they are?
Trust is a very subjective terminology, I think, to start this conversation off with. So they've gone viral, so to speak. The podcast who said, hey, if they win a 15 out of 18 or 15 out of 20, he'd eat the tweet or whatever. And that's all fun for, semantics, right? But we're talking about the actual basketball. And the Clippers are playing better basketball since obviously the beginning part of the year, where they should have, most people, and I included, was writing them off. Coming into the season, I said, hey, this is a pretty dangerous team, old, but still dangerous. Bradley Beal's situation flamed out. Remember, Chris Paul is still sent away from the team. So that, in essence, has flamed out. And somehow now they're finding a way to play their best basketball of this season, in the middle part of the season, even getting contributions from Jordan Miller and the like. But the key to this, obviously, is bearing the lead. And whether or not Kawhi Leonard is going to continue to look like this. He's averaging, I think it's the most amount of points in his career, I think, at this stage, which is really saying something. Yes, he's had 2 injury stints, but Harden has been relatively there the majority of the time. Zubac missed a couple of games. I think he might have missed 10 games, but he's back as well. And this is kind of like the brain trust, along with Ty Lue, of what makes the Clippers function in the way that they are. They're finding a way to play better defense, even despite their age, and they're also becoming a little bit more offensively efficient in general. But do we trust this? Hell to the no. Just hell to the no. I have nothing against this Clippers team, and these are great players, Kawhi and Harden, Hall of Famers, blah, 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 all the things. Brook Lopez, great contributions. John Collins, great contributions. Derek Jones, if he can get back and really help them in terms of their vertical spacing and even their overall defense as well, too. And Ty Lue is a good coach. But what about the Clippers wants you to invest and feel like, hey, when it comes down to April and May and air quote June, that they will be whole, in essence, to be able to do this. This all falls apart if Kawhi cannot keep it together. And ironically, if you're watching us on YouTube, he's the middle person in our graphic. He really is, like, it's him. Harden and Zubac, great, and they can be competitive, but they cannot be a playoff team or do anything in the Western Conference specifically unless Kawhi is a healthy Kawhi, contributing at the level in which we're seeing him right now. So that's a long soliloquy of like, hey, while I love what we're seeing, I want it to continue, but there's no way I would trust this to be the case and think that they'd be able to do something when the chips were down. Quab, your thoughts on the Clippers surge and whether or not you can trust this in general?
Oh man. Before the season started, we had a preview episode where we were just talking about different teams to start the season. And Josh asked me about the Clippers. I was like, I have no faith in them. And this was before they played a single game. I was like, I have no faith in them because it's the Clippers. And it's just one of those things and he was like, why? And we started, you list out the positive of your roster, how much talent they have. I was like, what will go wrong when it comes to the Clippers, when it comes to James Harden, right? We, like you just mentioned some stuff that happened with losing Bradley Beal, sending Chris Paul home. Before the season started, Kawhi Leonard was under investigation for planting trees. Like we soon forget. Like this is, and then they open the season losing to the Jazz. Not only like getting blown out. I was like, okay, what is happening right now, man? With the surge that's happened with this team, I'm not that much surprised about it because they still have talent on the roster, right? And it's not just regular talent; it's very top end talent. Like you have a James Harden, who's still one of the best players in the league. You have Kawhi when he's available on the floor, one of the best players in the league, right? Zubac, who is one of the best big men in the league. John Collins has been playing well for them. Chris Dunn as a defensive guard been playing well for them. They have solid role players on this roster. Brook Lopez off the bench, being a floor spacer is a big. All these are amazing positives. Do I trust the Clippers? No, I'm with you on that, Warren. I do not. I just can't do it. Just can't do it, man. Right now, the other thing is that they're I think they're currently 10th in the West, and you're kind of just battling to get into playoff contention or and out of the plan. The West is a crazy battle. Like you look at some of these teams that are at the top of the West, man. It's not going to be easy, and there are a couple of teams that people didn't expect to be as good as they are. Like for example, the Spurs being as high as they are. People feel like they're ahead of schedule with that squad, right? And you have a team like the Clippers that come with a lot of question marks. So now we're talking about if Kawhi is healthy, if James Harden doesn't falter in the playoffs, if like it's a lot of ifs. And anytime you play the game of ifs when it comes to a team, that's when I'm like, no, not happening. So in my opinion, I'll never be like, yeah, Clippers, they got it. Nah, I'm not with that though. So that's how I feel about it. What do you think, Cal?
You know, I've been doing this all show, right? Like all of these different analogies and stuff like that. So bear with me with this one. You ever basically sit down with your partner, or you watch that movie in that scene where, you know, the dude or the girl confronts the person about whether or not they're cheating, and it's hurting them to the core that this person that you're with is just basically lying to you and still continuously lies to you, knowing that even they know the truth. And you're trying to tell them, I will still love you. I will still care about you. I just need you to tell me the truth. And then in their mind, they think, oh, if I admit to this, we'll be okay. Like if I stop and actually do what it is that person's asking me to do, we'll be all right. And then when they finally admit it, right, that person is like, I just can't be around you right now. You disgust me. Like I can't be around you. I just need you. You know what I'm saying? Because you think that by admitting to the truth of it all, it actually is going to come all good. But what we don't realize, we're still human, right? We're still human, and we still have to go through our human emotions in order to be realistic about what needs to happen moving forward. But we're so caught up in our feelings that we don't want that. We want to skip past that part and make everything all good. And let's, bygones be bygones, and let's take it back to what it used to be, baby, and all this other kind of stuff. That's where I'm at when it comes to the LA Clippers, because we've done this dance with them so many times before. And the hard truth about this is, yes, I think that this is beautiful and wonderful for the NBA, because the Clippers become another cog in the wheel of the chaos that is the NBA season. They are going to do something to upset the narrative and not make it such an easy pathway for teams like the Thunder, for the Nuggets, or whomever else is out there trying to contend. But what we're talking about here is, do you buy into the idea that they are the type of team equipped to, you put them in a 7-game series, or you put them in a series that is going to get them elevated to either the finals, right, the conference finals, or get them to the NBA finals? And to that measure, you go, no, right? No, because to me, you could have had this conversation with them at the beginning of the year, and then you say, oh, so now you suddenly want to start playing like your world beaters. Or so now you suddenly want to start competing and acting like, all world contenders. And I think it just happens way too often. To me, I think the Clippers are a good basketball team. I think they're a team that can shake things up. But you're asking whether or not they're going to be able to sustain this through the course of the remainder of this regular season. And then ultimately, when the competition is now narrowed down to the top tier teams who have shown you through the course of an NBA season that they can do this, whether you play the good teams or the bad teams. But when it matters, they will get you in a 7-game series. Those teams seem to be better equipped to handle that and go through a team like the Clippers in convincing fashion, then I would believe in the Clippers going through those teams in a 7-game series in convincing fashion.
Yeah. So I'll close the Clippers conversation in the lens of like, I don't even know whether or not Kawhi or James Harden will make the All-Star team, and that doesn't really matter. I assume that they would want to take it off for the rest and the proverbial relaxation so that they can try to just, be as healthy down the stretch as possible. But this isn't an indictment on the Clippers as a talented franchise. This is an indictment on the Clippers as one that can stay healthy. And this is one of those reasons why I think the three of us we're quitting the Clippers in terms of our trust level. We wish you well, but I think we're romanticizing them in a way of a rom-com. I think is very appropriate. It's like we want it to work out, but we don't really know if it will. And if it does, hey, we're happy about it, but we just can't be that invested. And so ultimately, Clippers, we wish you all the best, but hopefully health will be your guide here and that you'll be able to make some noise in the Western Conference, but it doesn't seem likely based on previous track.
I'm just hoping that Tyler Perry will be doing the screenplay.
Oh, no. Now you done cursed
for the
them.
LA Clippers.
You done cursed them.
That's gonna be extra drama for no reason, man.
All right, Shaw. Let's go ahead and Quab. Let's go ahead and transition ourselves to the other team now that we're going to have this like sit down conversation. I don't know. Maybe there's an intervention here or something. The Philadelphia 76ers. Lo and behold, the Philadelphia 76ers decided to enter into the chat, right? They're now one of those teams that we have to be paying attention to. But I think that their case, Quab, is a very interesting case because if you would have asked me at the beginning of the year, what would be the X factor on the success of the Philadelphia 76ers, maybe 3 years ago, I would be on this saying it's all about Joel Embiid. And listen, I am not dismissing what Joel Embiid is currently doing right now. I think he's doing phenomenal. I think it's awesome. I think it's great. And whether or not that's going to be sustainable for the remainder of the year, we will soon see. But I think having a well-rounded, deep team that is helping to take that burden off of the reliability of a Joel Embiid by having a VJ Edgecombe and actually having a healthy Paul George, which we'll get into that little scenario in a moment. But as a well-rounded roster, to me, it would seem more viable to have more trust in the Philadelphia 76ers with or without Embiid, if as long as the team is maximizing the upside potential and contributions that you're getting from that roster and not solely depending on you having that phenom in Embiid on the basketball court. Like it's kind of like you sitting in play and putting a team together, but saying it can't happen unless Embiid is on the basketball court. And then you just forget about getting everybody else up to snuff in order to compete. To me, having a guy like Nick Nurse, you can clearly see that he has rounded this team to go out and play as if to say, we may have him, we may not, but we can still be a competitive basketball team regardless. And then having him will be the icing on the cake. Are we able to buy into the Sixers and have trust that if healthy, they legitimately can find a pathway coming out of the East?
Oh, well,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll say with to your point, Cal, the Nick Nurse point is actually excellent because Nick Nurse won a championship with Kawhi, and he was comfortable like not having Kawhi play like half the season, and just getting him ready for the playoffs and having that roster, just understanding how to play without him and with him, and being able to sustain that throughout the playoffs. That was pretty good. So to your point, that's a great point with the Nick Nurse thing. With the Sixers, man, I like their roster. I like the team, man. Big fan of Maxey. He's taken another huge leap this year as an all-star, basically as a superstar, right? You talk about their roster, how they have a very, very deep roster in terms of having wings. Their rookie VJ Edgecombe is playing phenomenal. For a rookie, they have guards such as Quentin Grimes coming off the bench who makes an impact. They have size off the bench with Andre Drummond and Adam Bona to like sustain minutes if Embiid is not playing. But it does come down to, can they have Embiid on the floor? Because we all know how good he is. And to me, if they have him on the floor, they can win the East. Like, plain and simple. Like, I feel like they're one of those teams that can win the East because they have a big that's you can view as one of the best players in the league. They have scoring guards. They have wings. They have depth at your positions, right? Now the Paul George news that dropped yesterday was that's a big hit to the team. But you can also look at it as the fact is like it gives him more of an opportunity to kind of get more healthy because he's looked good some days, he's looked rough some days, right? But with the Sixers, it comes down to, can they get their main players on the floor? If they do, they can win the East. Just because the East is it feels like such a crapshoot some days. We know who's on top of the East right now with the Pistons. They're playing really well. The Celtics are playing really well. A lot of people thought it was going to be a gap year. It's not. They've been hooping like Jalen Brown should be in MVP conversations with how well he's been playing. The Knicks, who on our podcast, Josh is a big Knicks fan. I'm not, so I'm known as the Knicks hater. I always make fun of the Knicks. So the Knicks have a lot of question marks. A lot of these teams in the East still have a lot of question marks, right? Including the Sixers. So to me, if the Sixers have the ability to get right, they have a chance of coming out in the East.
So I think I'll transition now to that exact conversation when it comes to Paul George. So Shams also reported, he's going to be suspended 25 games for substance, that is, I guess, banned by, the league, if you will. And Paul George was more or less taking to Twitter in a statement saying that whatever he utilized was primarily to kind of help him with his overall mental health. So we're not here to make fun or knock any of that, because that is obviously a very important situation for any player and anybody, period, player or otherwise, and just, want to be able to do those things safely and within the guidelines of whatever your job is. And the NBA is Paul George's job. Interestingly enough, though, I think a 25-game hiatus for Paul George is maybe not the worst thing in the world, I think, in terms of the wear and tear on his body. And so understanding like this isn't an injury that's taking place, hopefully he'll be able to continue to work out with the team and do the things necessary to kind of come back in, the latter part of March here. But ultimately, not a blessing in disguise per se, but it's also just not the worst thing in the world, I think, for the Sixers, who need to be healthy for this. And I will double down on what Quab said. I think, again, the big question is if, and, we said the same thing about the Clippers, but the East is more wide open. Maxey is an all-star. Edgecombe seems like he's going to be trending in that direction in a couple of years as well, too. And Embiid is a former MVP. It doesn't work without Embiid in terms of their overall ability to challenge in the Eastern Conference. Like, it just doesn't. And whether or not he can do what he's doing right now in this 15-game stretch really remains to be seen. But for whatever reason, maybe because I'm just not as scarred as I am with the Clippers, I can't quit the Sixers. And I know the downside of that. It's the polar opposite for whatever reason, but it's the same thing. The Clippers and the Sixers are basically East and West versions of each other in terms of the injuries and how much how you get your hopes up and they kind of let you down. But this version of Embiid in a weaker Eastern Conference gives me a lot of hope, and I think they're going to have to manage those minutes, obviously. But this Sixers team is really, really dangerous. They're not even playing Jared McCain really, in a real way. They just have guys and can still make other moves if they really needed to even kind of bolster some things for whatever eventual injury that comes up. But they cannot survive if Embiid goes down for any significant amount of time. Cal, your thoughts quickly on the Sixers and where this may be ultimately for them this season. You're on mute.
Sorry, guys. It could be a blessing in disguise. Because when we're talking about Paul George, right, like his point totals, I think, are down. I think for his position, the role that he plays, because I feel that there is a lack of depth for the Philadelphia 76ers. This should open up the opportunity, given where the Sixers are, that they should be buyers, that you should go out and get somebody that you can basically have come in, a veteran guy that can take up some minutes. And then you don't have to be pressed on the absence of Paul George. Paul George is still one of the most versatile two-way players in the game, especially for his role in his position. So I think, if anything, this should wake up the 76ers organization that if you're going to buy into a wide open East and you're doing what you're doing to preserve your star players, that you're making the certain moves in order to help bolster that. So that to me is part of where my mentality is about that. And it's not taking advantage of. No one was expecting this, but I think it should have been something that would have been on the Sixers' radar. The reason why it's easy for me to trust the Sixers as being a team is to reckon with is, to your point, if you're saying that the team is going to go over the top, Joel Embiid would be that guy. But partly because if you look at the East, you don't have a significant X factor front court player, with the exception of maybe the Detroit Pistons, but that's an up and coming Jalen Duren, right? You have Tobias Harris, you have a couple other guys. You literally have an X factor on both sides of the ball with Maxey and with Embiid, if Embiid is going to be healthy and ready to make the run. Ultimately,
hold on. I can't let you just glaze over this. You just took shots intentionally or unintentionally against Cat and Evan Mobley in the Eastern Conference, saying that the front court.
I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said that, because then why would the New York Knicks be in contention to get Giannis? All I'm saying is, if Giannis is going to be in this conversation, don't tell me that Cat will not be involved in that deal to move. You get what I'm saying?
Sure.
And to me, that speaks more about what the Knicks think about the dynamic of Karl-Anthony Towns and Jalen Brunson. I'm not saying that Karl-Anthony Towns can't ball out if the Knicks were to play the Sixers. But what I'm saying is that if you're making a serious run and you're looking at the matchups, I'm not trying to dismiss. I'm saying, if we're talking about if a move had to be made, the Knicks should never be in the conversation of trying to get Giannis if Karl-Anthony Towns is the guy that they think that he believes he's supposed to be. Look how long the Sixers have been holding on to Embiid and how many times we've said they should have been moving on from Embiid a long time ago. And now we're talking about the Sixers' pathway to probably get to the finals is whether or not Embiid is going to be healthy for this particular run.
I hear you. I mean, right now, the Sixers team.
I love how you like trying to throw me into the gas chamber, man. Damn.
I'm not throwing you in the gas chambers, but a statement was made in saying basically the rest of the Eastern Conference doesn't have formidable front court players. And I think it's not even a shot as much as it maybe is a fact. Mobley is still on the rise when he's also on the shelf right now, as we're talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers. So, right, he's the most dominating force in the Eastern Conference, while Jokic is the most dominating force on the Western Conference side. So if you have that with the combination of what you alluded to, even with Maxey as well too, you have an opportunity, and Edgecombe, who's playing amazing on both sides of the basketball. Quentin Grimes is giving them great minutes off the bench too when he's there. And not to mention, Kelly Oubre has found some sort of a renaissance, in Philadelphia. I don't know why he's so good there, but he has figured out his role. So you combine all those things with that of the musings of Nick Nurse, and you have something that could be extremely dangerous with Philadelphia Sixers. But it is, as always, very, very much health dependent.
Yeah, I don't want to dismiss the other combinations that are there, to your point, Shaw. I'm not trying to. But what I'm saying is, I was just alluding to who is the top team right now in the East, and that's the Detroit Pistons. And we're talking about a guy in Jalen Duren who's even yet to have proven himself. But I think we have given numerous chances to the other guys that we have talked about. They've had numerous opportunities to stand out alone. And even in some of those circumstances, Joel Embiid has actually outshone them or positioned the Sixers to beat them in those particular types of series. So all I'm just alluding to is the fact that if you're saying to the point that you just made, Embiid is the X factor, I'm just saying right now, as it stands for the teams that are currently stacked up as the top teams in the East, I'm not even talking about playing or where even the Sixers sit. He literally could stand head and shoulders to be the person that sways the momentum about whether or not a series can be won for the Philadelphia 76ers, because arguably none of those top three teams have anyone that's going to be able to match up with Joel Embiid to be able to best them in a 7-game series.
Quab, I'm going to kick it to you in this lane here. I'm going to make a statement. So Giannis aside, I would say Embiid's health is the most pivotal determining factor in the Eastern Conference right now. Would you agree or disagree with that statement?
I can agree with that statement. I actually, you know what? I say health in general is the biggest factor in the Eastern Conference, because there are, like, for example, the Cavs, right? If the Cavs are fully healthy, can we see them as the best team in the East?
I trust that less.
You trust that?
I trust that less. Well, I've been watching this. I've been
man.
watching this dance with the Cleveland Cavaliers now for 2-3 years, man. It's like, get it done already. Get it done. If maybe not being healthy has helped them make the excuse that we can't put them in that conversation until we fully see it happen. You know what I'm saying? But
that is true. That is true. I mean, to you guys' earlier point, when you guys brought up the Knicks, yeah, I would shade the Knicks if I was. I'm the guy that's gonna shade the Knicks and be like, yeah, nah, I don't think they have the front court and backcourt combination. Only because, and I say this jokingly, but also in the same front. Where when you look at a team like the Sixers, right, Maxey and Embiid are both able to be efficient on the court at the same time. The Knicks, like when it comes to Cat and Brunson, anytime I watch them, it feels like either or. Like they're always talking about, well, Brunson had a good game, but Cat fouled out, or like they never have the right balance. You know what I'm saying? And the Sixers are one of the few teams that are able to have the right balance with your stars and your role players when you're playing the right way. And they're able to and they're not, they're very capable on defense also when they're playing on the court when everybody's healthy. Again, the big thing being if and when everybody's healthy, right? So Embiid being healthy is important. You can say that they are a team that can win the East just because of your roster makeup right now. But the big factor being, is Embiid going to be healthy throughout the run? Is Paul George going to be able to come back and assimilate himself and just be a factor? With him being out again, hopefully he's all right mentally and physically. But when you look at his numbers, he wasn't putting up like Paul George all-star type numbers, but he was a factor on both ends. So you hope he's able to get right and come back and help the team progress. But the Sixers are going to be I feel like at the end of the year, they're going to be a factor in the East. And also because of the position they're in, a first round series with them is going to be hell for somebody, because you're not going to be as high as they should be. And it's not going to be a typical first round series. You're going to look at a team that's probably higher on the conference standings, facing a team that has Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, and all these players, and it's going to be like, yo, why are we here right now? Why are we dealing with this?
Yeah, right now,
question their life.
Yeah, and right now that would be, a Boston or New York. And I honestly think Boston would be deathly afraid, while Keita has been nice and all. I just don't think they want that smoke with Embiid, having to deal with that in the first round. Again, if the playoffs were today, and we know that they're not. So we have a long way to go here before we get to that conversation. But agreed, if the Sixers continue to hover around a 5-6 seed, they're going to be very, very difficult. And I think in some ways, maybe for the other teams in the East, like maybe if they ascend in some ways and get into the more 3 range, then it might be more of a balance in terms of like, hey, this is more befitting of a matchup versus like, oh snap, we're the 2 or 3 seed and then we got this as our prize for the first round. That just seems unfair.
Absolutely, man. This has been a great conversation all around, man. Some good stuff over here. Kwab, man, thanks again for hopping on board with us this week, man. This has been fruitful to discuss. Is now has me questioning everything I said. So Shaw, as you can clearly see, man, I think I've abandoned ship on my pick about the Cavaliers get to the conference finals.
It happens to the best of us. You can join me. I've been off board on them for a good little while, so it's all good.
Oh man, you guys, no faith in the
Kwab, man,
Cavs. No faith
hey,
in the
let
Cavs.
everybody
That's
know
crazy.
let everybody know where you at, brother. Let everybody know what you and your peoples are doing and what you up to, brother.
Oh man, you can find me at the Dime NBA with Josh and Quab on YouTube. You can follow me on my socials. Is KWAB AKAYES. We on YouTube we try to cover games every usually we try to cover games every day, have an episode every day. It's kind of tough with schedules, but uh we love the NBA. We love basketball. Love you guys' show. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you guys. You guys are killing it as always. And yeah, man, it's gonna be a great second half of the season coming up, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, man, we cannot wait to chop it up with you again, man. This is obviously not the last time. With so much going on, it would be only right to be able to get you on and you know what I'm saying, get your thoughts as well too. So we definitely look forward to bringing you back on here, man. And as again, man, once again, my man Shaw and I, we appreciate all of our peoples for hopping on board with us this week for the Baseline. Cali, Warren Shaw, special shout outs to our man Quab from the Dime, and we will catch up with you next time.